Welcome to ManCity Matters, your home for the latest Manchester City news, transfer updates, rumors, and everything happening around the Etihad. In today's video, we're covering the latest major developments surrounding Manchester City, including Pep Guardiola's reported links with the Italy job, the latest on Ayyoub Bouaddi and Elliot, City's academy pipeline, and Phil Foden's future under new head coach Enzo Maresca. So if you're a City fan, make sure you subscribe to ManCity Matters, turn on notifications, and let's get straight into the latest Manchester City news. Enthusiastic Pep Guardiola in talks over becoming next Italy manager. Pep Guardiola has emerged as the clear frontrunner to become the next head coach of Italy, with concrete face-to-face talks already having taken place between the Spaniard and senior figures at the Italian Football Federation, FIGC. According to Sky Sport Italia, FIGC technical director Paolo Maldini and his advisor Leonardo flew out to Barcelona specifically to meet Guardiola in person, a trip that only came to light after photographs of the pair in Spain began circulating on social media and prompted immediate speculation about their purpose. Once confirmed, reports suggested the conversation was substantial rather than a token courtesy meeting, with talks said to have extended across an entire weekend rather than lasting a single sitting. The vacancy itself has existed since April, when Gennaro Gattuso resigned as Italy head coach following a playoff defeat to Bosnia-Herzegovina that condemned the Azzurri to missing out on a third consecutive Men's World Cup, a painful continuation of a barren run that has seen Italy fail to escape the group stage or qualify at all in 3 of the last 4 tournaments, with Euro 2020 glory under Roberto Mancini standing as the only real high point in recent years. The FIGC's response to that latest failure was structural as well as personnel-related. Newly elected Federation President Giovanni Malago, who won the presidency on June 22 ahead of rival candidate Giancarlo Abate, brought in Maldini as technical director and recruited former Brazil international Leonardo in a consultancy capacity specifically to help drive the search for a new manager. Malago has since gone public with confirmation that Guardiola is genuinely under consideration, telling the Cronache di Spogliatoio podcast that while nothing is guaranteed, the Federation felt it was right to open a dialogue with the former Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Manchester City manager and to keep that channel alive. He also hinted that the FIGC would be prepared to make unusual financial concessions to land a coach of Guardiola's stature, a rare admission given how tightly national federations typically manage their wage structures. The central obstacle remains Guardiola's own stated plans rather than any reluctance on Italy's part to pursue him. A source briefed ESPN that Guardiola's actual conversation with FIGC representatives lasted barely a minute in practical terms, because he made clear immediately that his intention is to take at least a year away from football entirely following his exit from Manchester City this summer, bringing an end to a 10-year spell in charge that delivered more than a dozen major trophies, including 3 Champions League titles and a win ratio above 70%. In personal comments reported around his departure, Guardiola explained that after starting out as a manager at 37 and dedicating his entire adult life to the game, he now wants to discover a life outside it, spending more time with his children and his 95-year-old father, and adjusting to a phase of life he described as still new to him at 56. That has not stopped other national federations from testing the water. Sources indicated that at least 2 or 3 other countries have made informal approaches to Guardiola's camp in recent weeks, with the Netherlands understood to be among them following Ronald Koeman's exit after a round of 32 World Cup elimination. England have also been repeatedly linked with Guardiola in the past, though the Football Association's official position for now remains one of continued backing for Thomas Tuchel, despite England's own World Cup semi-final defeat to Argentina. Every approach so far, including Italy's, has reportedly been met with the same response. Guardiola is not currently available, though some interested parties have indicated a willingness to wait given that no major international tournament falls in the coming year. Guardiola has never been shy about wanting to test himself outside club football. As far back as 2018, he spoke about the dream of one day managing at a World Cup or European Championship, and pundits have suggested Italy's situation, a proud football nation in genuine need of a rebuild rather than a quick fix, could appeal to him precisely because of the scale of the project on offer, if and when his sabbatical ends. In the meantime, the FIGC is understood to be keeping other options alive, including former Azzurri boss Roberto Mancini, Juventus legend Andrea Pirlo, and increasingly Antonio Conte, whose name has grown louder as a leading alternative candidate should the wait for Guardiola stretch on longer than the federation would like. Man City's next generation. Young players pushing for first-team involvement. While Manchester City's summer has been dominated by headline-grabbing midfield business, a quieter but arguably more significant story is unfolding beneath the surface of the first team. The club's academy graduates and development squad prospects continuing to push for genuine involvement under new head coach Enzo Maresca. City's academy has for close to a decade been regarded as one of the most productive youth systems anywhere in Europe, generating more than £500 million in transfer income since Pep Guardiola's arrival in 2016, while simultaneously proving capable of feeding senior first-team quality directly into Guardiola's, and now Maresca's, squad, with Phil Foden standing as the clearest example of a homegrown academy graduate becoming one of the finest players of his generation. The scale of that pipeline becomes obvious simply by looking at where former City Academy players have ended up. Beyond Foden, players who came through City's elite development squad, commonly referred to internally as the EDS, a level sitting between the academy proper and the senior first team, are now scattered across the Premier League and wider European football, from Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, Jamie Gittins, Tosin Adarabioyo, and Liam Delap at Chelsea, to Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa, Jeremy Frimpong and Brahim Diaz at clubs in Germany and Spain respectively, and Douglas Luiz now at Juventus. Wolves have 2 former City Academy products in their own squad, while Southampton have fielded as many as 5 at once in recent seasons, a testament to both the volume and the perceived quality of players passing through City's system, even if the majority ultimately move on rather than break into City's own senior side. That willingness to sell, rather than block pathways, has become something of a deliberate model under Guardiola, who has previously described the financial return from academy sales as extraordinary, given City rarely need to reinvest heavily to replace departing prospects, while typically inserting buyback clauses that leave the door open for a player to return if their development accelerates elsewhere. At the same time, Guardiola built a reputation for never handing a young player an opportunity they had not clearly earned, which is part of why the emergence of any new name from the academy setup tends to be taken seriously by supporters rather than dismissed as hype. Inside the current squad picture, the pattern established by Foden and, more recently, Cole Palmer before his move to Chelsea and Nico O'Reilly's step-up into first-team contention continues to shape expectations for the next wave of prospects coming through. Several younger midfielders and attackers remain closely monitored by City's coaching staff, with the club's historical approach favoring genuine minutes and tour involvement, including senior preseason trips to the United States, for players judged ready rather than blanket loan spells regardless of readiness. That approach has continued into the current transfer window, even as City spend heavily at senior level. The club has agreed a deal to sign highly rated teenage winger Jeremy Manga, reportedly beating Arsenal to his signature, and has separately been credited with an agreement to bring in 16-year-old Misha Nduka from Arsenal on scholarship terms ahead of a first professional contract, despite Arsenal having offered Nduka a competitive long-term deal of their own. At the same time, City continue to loan out academy graduates for further development, including goalkeeper Pierce Charles to Queen's Park Rangers and striker Matthijs de Tourbe, who arrived from sister club Troyes, out to Monaco, while confirming the permanent departure of academy forward Ryan Heskey to FC Köln in the Bundesliga after his contract talks at the Etihad stalled. Taken together, the picture forming under Maresca is one of continuity rather than disruption when it comes to youth policy. Big money first-team signings arriving alongside continued heavy investment in identifying and developing the next generation, with City's coaching staff clearly still backing the underlying model that turned Foden, Palmer, and others into some of the Premier League's most sought-after young talents. ManCity reach agreement with Ayyoub Bouaddi as Elliot Anderson transfer nears completion. Manchester City appear to be closing in on what would be a second major midfield addition of the summer, with multiple reports out of Italy and beyond, claiming the club has reached an agreement in principle with Lille and Morocco international Ayyoub Bouaddi over personal terms. Respected transfer journalist Nicolo Schira reported that City have agreed a contract with the 18-year-old that would run all the way through to 2031, though the club still needs to finalize a separate club-to-club agreement with Lille over the actual transfer fee before any deal can be completed. Bouaddi enters the conversation as one of the most coveted midfield prospects in European football following a standout World Cup campaign with Morocco, adding to a breakout club season in which he made 42 appearances for Lille despite his young age, and became a genuinely important player for the League One side, rather than a fringe squad member. That combination of tournament exposure and consistent league minutes has triggered serious interest from well beyond Manchester City. Arsenal held initial talks over a possible summer deal as Mikel Arteta looked to strengthen his own midfield options, and Manchester United have also been credited with monitoring the situation, while City are reported to expect at least 2 further unnamed major European clubs to make late moves as well. Much of the negotiation now hinges on structure and price rather than City's underlying willingness to do the deal. Lille chairman Olivier Letang has been unusually candid in public about his valuation, pointing directly to the fees Manchester City paid for Elliot Anderson, £116 million, and Tottenham paid for Sandro Tonali, £100 million, as reference points, and arguing that Bouaddi's long-term development potential exceeds both. A framing clearly intended to push his own asking price above the £100 million mark. Other reporting, however, suggests Lille's more realistic asking price for an immediate, permanent sale sits closer to £84 million, with the French club open to accepting a somewhat reduced package if City agree to either a loan-back arrangement, allowing Bouaddi to continue playing in League One for a further period, or a pre-agreement structure under which a deal is effectively signed now but not formally activated until a future transfer window. An approach that would let Lille retain his services in the short term while giving City contractual certainty that a rival cannot hijack the move later. According to The Athletic's Sam Lee, City's football staff view Bouaddi specifically as a deep-lying, combative midfielder who is exceptionally comfortable in possession, but who will still need to develop his output in the final third. A profile sporting director, Hugo Viana, and head coach Enzo Maresca reportedly regard as increasingly necessary in the physical demands of the modern Premier League, and one that helps explain why the club has prioritized 2 midfield signings of this type in the same window rather than treating Bouaddi and Anderson as competing for the same role. That parallel deal for Elliot Anderson is itself reported to be entering its final stages. Anderson's proposed £116 million move from Nottingham Forest, which would represent a significant blow to Manchester United given their own long-standing interest in the England international as a potential long-term successor to aging midfielders like Casemiro, is now being described in several outlets as a done deal, in all but formal confirmation, with Forest's valuation understood to sit close to £90 million before City's total package pushed the deal beyond 9 figures. Incoming sporting director Hugo Viana is credited with having identified Anderson as a priority target as far back as last summer, and his continued involvement in shaping recruitment is seen as a key factor in tipping the transfer decisively City's way. Should both deals go through, City would enter the new Premier League season with two of the summer's most talked-about young central midfielders added in a single window, giving Maresca a rebuilt engine room to work with as he looks to reshape the side following a difficult recent campaign and the summer departures of several longer-serving squad members. Why Chelsea keeps signing Manchester City's academy graduates. A fresh wave of transfer activity has once again drawn attention to one of English football's more unusual recurring patterns: Chelsea's habit of raiding Manchester City's academy for first-team reinforcements. The latest example is forward Morgan Rogers, reported to be on the verge of a move to Stamford Bridge, where he would be reunited with a growing group of former City youth teammates already established in Chelsea's senior squad. The roots of this relationship trace back further than most fans realize. Chelsea's own academy went through a genuinely golden period in the late 2010s, a run partly enabled by a transfer ban that forced the club to blood its own youngsters. That period produced Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, Fikayo Tomori, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Andreas Christensen, and Reece James, all of whom established themselves under Frank Lampard. At the same time, City were rapidly expanding their own academy infrastructure under Abu Dhabi ownership, pouring investment into youth development, an area of spending exempt from the financial controls placed on first-team transfer and wage budgets. For a period, the dominance of both academies was such that City and Chelsea maintained an informal understanding not to sign players from one another's youth systems, a gentleman's agreement designed to avoid inflating wages and fees at academy level. That arrangement has since quietly ended, opening the door to exactly the kind of cross-club recruitment now playing out. The shift wasn't isolated to these two clubs either. Manchester United, Liverpool, and Arsenal all began new waves of investment in their own academies around the same period, partly a reaction to post-Brexit regulations that made signing overseas players under the age of 18 far more difficult, pushing English clubs to compete harder domestically for the same pool of homegrown talent. One knock-on effect has been increased scrutiny of scouting practices between clubs. Liverpool's 2024 signing of now England youth international Rio Ngumoha from Chelsea, for instance, reportedly prompted several rival clubs to place informal restrictions on their own youth scouts operating around Chelsea's academy setup. The numbers involved in the City-to-Chelsea pipeline specifically are striking. Chelsea's current senior squad features 6 players who came through City's youth system: Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, Jamie Gittins, Tosin Adarabioyo, Liam Delap, and now, seemingly, Rogers. Combined, those transfer fees add up to close to £300 million paid by Chelsea since 2023 alone. By contrast, manager Xabi Alonso can currently call upon only 3 senior players who progressed through Chelsea's own Cobham Academy: Levi Colwill, captain Reece James, and young defender Josh Atchiampong, with even that number under some pressure. Given Trevoh Chalobah, another academy product still technically on Chelsea's books, is reported to be in advanced talks over a permanent move to Serie A side Como. The trend was visible again in a recent preseason fixture between the two clubs, where several ex-City Academy graduates featured directly against their old club, with Palmer among the scorers in a 3-2 Chelsea win and Delap leading Chelsea's forward line, underlining just how much of Chelsea's rebuilt identity under Alonso now rests on players first developed a few miles away at the Etihad campus. Separately, and slightly less directly connected, some reports have suggested that Chelsea's own transfer business this summer may have unintentionally worked in City's favor in at least one unrelated situation: an ongoing tussle with Arsenal over a separate target, though the specific mechanism behind that claim remains speculative rather than confirmed by any single source, and appears more coincidental timing than deliberate cooperation between the two clubs. Manchester City's wider summer of change. Even setting aside the individual sagas around Ayyoub Bouaddi, Elliot Anderson, and the club's academy graduates, the bigger picture at Manchester City this summer is one of a genuinely significant squad reset, as new head coach Enzo Maresca works to reshape the group he inherited, following Pep Guardiola's departure after a decade in charge. The scale of turnover already confirmed marks one of the most active windows City have had in years, touching senior defenders, attacking players, and academy prospects alike. On the outgoing side, several long-serving names have already left the Etihad. Manuel Akanji's exit was effectively triggered automatically, with Inter Milan activating a £13 million release clause following their Serie A title win. Bernardo Silva, one of the most influential midfielders of the Guardiola era, departed as a free agent to sign for Real Madrid on a deal running through to June 2028, with reports suggesting Jose Mourinho's appointment at the Bernabeu played a part in persuading Silva to choose Madrid over interest from Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. Longtime centre-back John Stones has also left as a free agent after 10 years at the club, with more recent reporting suggesting a move to London, potentially Arsenal, who are said to be ahead of Chelsea in that particular race, now looks more likely than a reunion with any former Etihad teammates elsewhere. On the incoming side, City have already committed a club record fee to sign Elliot Anderson from Nottingham Forest and continue to push hard to complete a second marquee midfield addition in Ayyoub Bouaddi from Lille. Beyond those two headline targets, the club have also been credited with holding talks through intermediaries over a potential move for AS Roma and France international Manu Kone, in a deal that could cost in the region of £50 million, though Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea have all reportedly been sounded out over the France midfielder as well, meaning City are far from guaranteed to win that particular race. At academy and fringe squad level, the club's transfer activity has continued in parallel with its senior business. City have added highly rated teenage winger Jeremy Manga and are reported to have reached an agreement to sign 16-year-old Misha Nduka from Arsenal on scholarship terms ahead of a first professional contract. At the same time, the club has continued its established pattern of loaning out young players for further first-team experience elsewhere, sending goalkeeper Pierce Charles to Championship side Queen's Park Rangers and forward Mathys Détourbe, who initially arrived from City's sister club, French side Troyes, out on loan to Monaco. Academy graduate Reigen Heskey, meanwhile, is reported to be leaving permanently for FC Köln in the Bundesliga after contract extension talks at City stalled, continuing over into League Two, where another City Academy striker has also departed on a permanent deal in recent days. Taken as a whole, the picture forming under Maresca this summer is one of a club attempting a genuine reset rather than a minor refresh, trimming an aging core built up over the Guardiola years, backing the new head coach with two significant midfield signings, and continuing to lean on the academy pipeline that has quietly fed clubs right across Europe, Chelsea most visibly among them for close to a decade. Phil Foden to hold talks with Enzo Maresca over his role next season. Phil Foden is planning to sit down with new head coach Enzo Maresca to establish exactly where he fits into the club's plans heading into the new season, according to former Manchester United chief scout Mick Brown, speaking to Football Insider. The 26-year-old endured a stop-start campaign under Pep Guardiola last season, struggling to consistently justify a starting place, and now finds himself facing an unusually crowded field of competition for attacking minutes under the new manager, with Rayan Cherki, Antoine Semenyo, Savinho, Jeremy Doku, Tijani Reinders, Elliot Anderson, and Omar Marmoush, all viewed as options across the same general areas of the pitch. Brown, who first flagged in April that Foden had been told he needed to raise his performance levels, partly to help fill the creative void left by Bernardo Silva's departure, suggested it would be genuinely revealing to see how City and Maresca handled the situation in the coming weeks. According to Brown, Foden's underwhelming form last season was directly responsible for his omission from England's World Cup squad, And with so much fresh competition added to City's attacking options this summer, reclaiming a guaranteed starting role will not come easily regardless of which specific position. A central number 10 role, a wide attacking berth, or a deeper central midfield function. City ultimately decides suits him best. Brown's assessment was that Foden would understandably want reassurance directly from his new manager that he still has a genuine defined role to play, rather than risk drifting to the fringes of a squad now packed with attacking depth. At the same time, Brown was careful to note that reassurance alone would not be enough. Foden, in his view, will still need to significantly improve on last season's output to earn a leading role under Maresca, even if the player's own ambition remains to be central to whatever identity the new head coach builds, rather than settle into a rotational squad player function.
Much of the surrounding speculation about Foden's long-term future has been closely tied to his contract situation, with under 12 months remaining on his existing deal heading into the window. That uncertainty, compounded by doubts that emerged following Guardiola's exit, had been enough to draw interest from a number of clubs across Europe, reportedly keeping tabs on the situation, testing whether City might be forced into a decision on his future sooner rather than later. However, that particular source of uncertainty now appears to be resolving in City's favor. Football Insider reported on July 17th that the club are closing in on formally announcing a contract extension for Foden, understood to be a 4-year deal, after the two parties reached an agreement in principle as far back as May. Confirmation has taken longer than some expected to materialize publicly, but talks are described as having progressed positively throughout, and Foden is now expected to formally put pen to paper on the new terms in the near future. A development that, combined with his planned conversation with Maresca over his role, suggests City are working to settle Foden's situation on both fronts, contractually and on the pitch, before the new Premier League season gets underway. And that's the latest from Manchester City and around the Etihad. What do you think about the latest transfer developments, Pep Guardiola's future, and Phil Foden's situation under Enzo Maresca? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to ManCity Matters, and turn on notifications for all the latest Manchester City news, transfer updates, and rumors. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Come on, City!